Hello, friends. Welcome to the Random Thought Pod. I am your random thought leader, Bridge Watt, and I'm here with my co-host, the girl.
Representing all of us about everything.
Yes, I'm very fortunate that we just lucked out and we found the universal girl.
That's
Kind of
right.
like the universal Christ. Maybe that should be Richard Rohr's sequel to it.
The Universal Christ.
Yeah, his squeakquel book. It's weird, like when people write sequel books.
Mm.
It's not a movie, guys.
That's a good
if it's a
point.
novel, maybe.
Right,
But
there's more story, but
yeah, I read the manuscript for somebody's sequel to one of their books, and I'm like, why does this have to be a sequel? It doesn't even have the same name. They're just
did they learn new information? Are they trying to be like, okay, things have changed since I spoke to you last?
I guess, yeah.
That's
I
gotta
don't
be
know.
it.
Although, I mean, Keith Giles, seriously, his books, it's Jesus Unforsaken, Jesus Unbound, Jesus whatever. They're all
that's right.
yeah, the Jesus whatever books.
The un-Jesus books.
The Jesus whatever books.
Get them at everywhere books are sold.
And then there's now he's got Sola Mysterium. I don't know if I'm saying it right. And now there's Solo Deuce. So
both of those sound like excellent beers.
They are. Actually, it's funny. I was reading his second book, for that series, and it was like church on the plane. I was like, this is so good.
Yeah.
I'm learning. It's I kind of been struggling with what worship is, because a lot of times when I hear people worshiping, I'm like, oh, you're worshiping the God that tells you that you know everything and you can tell people how to live their lives. So I'm very cynical about it, because I'm like, you guys are and this is probably not what worship necessarily is, but I always kind of thought that it's I am aligning myself with my deity. Ooh. And once I'm aligned with my deity, now I know how to love people. But it's if that's a shitty deity, then you're loving people in a shitty way.
Shitty way, yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm I don't like that. And so it's just kind of funny, because it's the last couple times I've been so there was the podcast episode that I recorded previous to this, God Can't, with Thomas J. Ord. Which, I mean, you wouldn't know because you're not subscribed. But
I am now. The best part being, once I hit subscribe, I went, oh, there's episodes I'm not on? Okay. I truly didn't know there was anybody else.
That's so awesome. But anyways, yeah, when we were doing that episode, there was just something very life-changing about it, as he was talking about this God that is just pure love.
Yeah.
And how it's we're made in the image of love, so we have the capacity for love, which means we also have the capacity for not love. But God does not have a capacity for not love. And that's kind of what all of his kind of theology is based on, is this idea that there's just this being that's always love. And then when we pray, it opens up more possibilities for what God can do, because he's a consensual God, because that's what love is.
Right.
And I'm like, that's very different. But as he was describing that, I was just getting really excited and just feeling very worshipful. And I feel the same effect in reading Sola Deuce. I'm I'm feeling the same way, where I'm I'm really excited about this, because it's Sola Deuce is kind of I hope I'm saying the title properly. Deuce.
It'd be great.
Poop.
It's just so not.
But I'm just kind of having that same sense where it's kind of okay, well, the baby food is Jesus died for your sins.
Mm-hmm.
Let's move on to the adult food now,
right?
Which is essentially everything is connected. It's we're all connected, and it's God is in us and we are in God, and it's it's such a it's a mind F.
You can curse.
We can say the F word, but I'm not going to say it.
I'm going to save it.
But I don't know.
It special.
It seems like a weird thing to say.
Okay.
I'm you're doing what to my mind? I remember there was like an image of what, like somebody was saying, like if your wife's wearing or reading those like love novels, this is what it's doing to her brain, and then it
Yeah.
showed like the act.
Like when you,
Like
a
there's
lot of
a
our,
female genitalia in her skull. I'm like, what?
I don't think so.
Anyways, I don't
I'm
think
not a
so either.
medical professional.
Yeah, I don't know.
Oh gosh.
There's weird people on Elon's X,
On
Elon
Elon's
Sex,
X, it's
Elon's
Elon's
X.
X is so bad. It's gonna take away the
And
block
as we
button.
talked about, this is going to be the title of this
Yeah,
episode,
sorry
Elon's
everyone.
Sex.
That's
Yeah.
why we're rated E.
You guys going to be like disappointed that Elon's not having sex on this podcast?
What if it got taken down? What if he was mad that we used his name in vain?
Oh, in vain. Yeah.
Yep.
The Elon bros are going to be so mad.
I don't get it. He's gonna take away the block button. I ain't doing it. Yeah.
I am
do you
debating
think?
whether this is the deal breaker for me. I have in particular one person that had slandered me online.
That's right.
And I'm like, do I just let him ramble at me? I don't know. Because I don't want to go into protected, and I've developed a following.
True.
I'm
I
really
forgot
happy
protected
with on
was
Twitter.
a thing. I go like, well, this still allows any jack off to just like start QTing anything I say and whatever. And part of the blocking isn't I'm going to keep you out of, I don't want to see your life. It's I'm keeping you out of mine. Like that's a proper boundary. I'm not affecting you, but I'm protecting me. So I'm like, I'm not like I have big bad enemies, but I love to know that that person can't see me.
Yeah.
Then again, if they just log out of Twitter and go into my profile without logging in, they can see anything. But I think that's
It's
the
so
breaking
tough.
point. Someone brought
it's
up that it's
hard
against
because
the
it's
terms
like-
of service for Apple that you
Oh.
can't allow people to like not block other users or something. So if
Oh.
that's big, if true.
Okay, this was my prediction the moment he started doing that whole Twitter blue nonsense. I figured that what he would do, because when we were saying block the blue, I'm like, oh God, you know what's going to happen? He's going to take away our right to block because we're blocking advertisers too, right? So I was like, he's going to do that, but he's going to keep the feature for the paying people. So right now he says he's taking away the feature.
Right.
What's going to happen next is he's going to have outcry.
Oh, you want it back?
And then he's going to say, oh, I'm going to give it to the Paysies people.
You're right.
Yeah.
I love when I see someone with like 9 followers and they're verified. I'm like, why though? Why?
It's so funny.
No one cares if you're you. No one.
So yeah, I do subscribe to this podcast, and it's like just so I can kind of see.
I do now.
Oh, it came out now. I'm not like one of those people who does like the podcast episode where I'm like and subscribe, right? I'm like, if you are listening to this, I'm assuming you're probably subscribed and you know how to subscribe,
right?
And maybe that's my downfall, and that's why I don't have like a ton of listeners, but.
I'm
also
appreciated,
building
like there were some that
from,
I was from the ground up. We're starting fresh there. I appreciate it when people were like, it actually helps the algorithm, like the numbers, more people that are subscribing, more people. Like if that's true, and I don't know this stuff, but if that's true that it helps with you to be found more than just that one subscriber, it like pushes it up a little bit. That makes sense.
Just not a hustler. It's funny, like, and I don't know if I told you about this, but like when I connected with this like well-known podcaster on LinkedIn, and the guy's like, "Oh, hey, great to connect with you," and all this stuff, and I'm like, "Yeah, surprised you're DMing me," kind of thing, but like, okay, cool. And then he starts just trying to hustle me. He's like, "Oh, have you signed up for my course?" Like, because he's like,
"Oh, that's icky."
Yeah, and I was like, I kind of mentioned that I'm a podcaster, and he's like, "Oh, have you signed up for my course on networking and all this stuff?" And I'm just like, man, like, is this how this guy is all the time? Is that how he got to where he was? Because I'm like, I'm not interested in getting to where he is by being that annoying. Like, yeah. Okay. And I think me saying networking, I think people might be able to derive which podcaster I'm talking about. But anyways. All right. So anyways, yeah. So we could do the like and subscribe thing, like a normal podcast.
Yeah.
Like and subscribe this podcast. There's a button, guys, or
It
whatever.
means so much to us.
Okay. Now it's time for my fake Patreon.
Oh.
All right. So those people who've signed up for our fake Patreon, Kevin Schreider, Brittany Hapcock, Dwell Murin, Plapla Trevnovaklov, Darren What, and Melinda Gates. Oh, Melinda Gates. I wonder if that's the same Melinda Gates.
Has to be.
Yeah, it's a pretend version.
What else does she have doing? What else does she have going on?
Yeah. I like Darren What.
Darren What.
I had to put one that's hard to pronounce in there.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Plapla Trevnovaklov. Sounds like a hockey player.
Oh, I absolutely think so.
Speaking of different names.
Yeah. Ooh, segue.
You were telling me. This was something we didn't get to in the last episode.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, I just want to say, like, ADD Masterminds, we always had, like, a big, long list that we had to get through. And so I would always just, like, rope people into, like, okay, now next topic. Now it's next topic, right? Yeah. And so one of the feedback I got from my kid who listened to the pilot episode, he's like, hey, that's cool. You guys have great chemistry as co-hosts, but, like, maybe you shouldn't cut her off. And I was like... And I'm like, I didn't realize I was doing that, but it kind of was the habit for ADD Masterminds, right? Yeah. He's like, I just felt like she had more to say on this specific topic. And I'm like, you're right. Yeah. So I'm like, I'm going to try to let you be more co-hosty. Okay. So different names of God depending on what you want. That was something you really wanted to get to, and we never got to last episode. So tell me.
So this came in my head, and I'm assuming it had to do with, it must have popped up with like the Gothard documentary that dropped recently.
Oh, yeah.
That I was very much taught the names of God and that it was very important. And it wasn't something that everybody did all the time. But I remember, and I reached out to a couple of friends from like high school, and they were like, oh yeah, I still remember all of them and what they did, like these names, these offices of God. But, from the song, everybody knows Jehovah Jireh is your provider. But I was like, oh, no. There's Jehovah Shammah, Jehovah Makedesh, Jehovah Shekenu. I'm saying that one wrong. Jehovah Rapha is your healer. Like, or it's
Jehovah Rapha.
Yeah. And I remember somebody very specifically that had dealt with, this story is going to end sad for God, but that she had dealt with medical issues for a long time. And she was like, I had no help, like no relief until I really, like, I wrote an actual letter to Jehovah Rapha, like our healer. And then this special diet healed my colon. Like, bless her. She believed it. It was true. Turns out 10 years later, she had this tremendous surgery and now she's healed. But like, I thought it was so bizarre. It made sense at the time. And then it was like, is this a code word? Like when you're like in the real serious, like you pray to God normal. And then when it's like, no, this is actually a really big problem. So like Jehovah Jireh's got to come in because we can't make rent. Or are people doing this all the time? And it turns out a lot of, the evangelicals of the 90s definitely learned this. Like it was some kind of special knowledge. Couple of people here and there said that they hadn't learned it, but is this something that you're familiar with at all? Like as a tactic in prayer?
Not that familiar with. Like I knew that God has lots of names. Like there was a John Mark Comer. John God Mark Comer wrote that book, God Has a Name. It was fantastic.
I loved that book.
It was kind of interesting when he talks about like how in the Old Testament all those gods, he's like, yeah, they really existed. I'm like, what?
The fact that someone would acknowledge that was fantastic to me. I loved it. And I was like, no, it's right there. And if you want to get into like the cryptid stuff, there's a lot of like the Watchers and the Rephaim and the Nephilim and everything, like all that stuff's in there. And we'd brush it over. But absolutely true that like these gods that had territories and stuff. And that's why he made a big deal about it, because it's true. Like, people need to talk about this.
Crazy though. And it's interesting because I'm like, part of me is like, it's funny to me that evangelicals, the same people who believe God created the world using words, would often say, like with someone like the former president. I mean, he's still president, right? But
right.
you know, how he would say like some awful things, and people are like, "Oh, it's just words. Words
It's
don't
just,
matter." And
yeah,
it's like
exactly.
your faith, words should matter, but at the same time, I do think it's kind of silly that it's like only through Jesus' name can you be saved. Because what if Jesus' name was Eric?
This is my favorite thing you do. This is my favorite thing you do. God's name is Eric.
I know we didn't. We haven't done it on this episode yet, so I
That's
was like,
true.
and
Sorry.
I can't remember how exactly I explained it on ADD
You'd be
Masterminds.
like, just what if? What if his
Yeah,
name
what
was
if?
Eric?
Yeah, it's like, what if Eric died for your sins? It
That's what it
wasn't
was.
Jesus, it was Eric.
It was Eric. And which I find also fascinating because a lot of people are like, well, people weren't walking around Nazareth calling him Jesus. It didn't sound just like that. Someone recently I read was like, well, his name was actually probably Joshua. And, like Yeshua and all these different, and they're like, no, I don't think we actually know 100% how we should have pronounced his name. So maybe we don't get hung up on those specifics. But
wouldn't
I
it be
don't think it was
amazing
Eric.
if there was like an archaeological find that his name really was Eric?
Eric, oh my gosh. Like he's got this Nordic name for sure. You just bringing white Jesus to fruition. No.
I'd be really disappointed if it turned out Jesus really was white.
Yeah, that'd be such a bummer. Have you seen The Chosen? I hate to run us off track.
I have not, but I've heard there's a lot of controversy surrounding it, like involving him not being able to pee at night or something.
Well, this is news to me. I kind of want to cut it now because I have no idea what you're talking about. No, it's fine. I'm only like 6 episodes in. No one has peed.
That's interesting.
That I'm aware of. On screen.
I actually asked on Elon Sex, did Jesus have a bumhole? No one answered. Because I'm like, I kind of figure like if Kim Jong-un had no bumhole or has no bumhole, it's like, why would Jesus have a bumhole?
Oh, they've said he does not have a bumhole. Like,
yeah, that's what they say. That's what they say. That's like some of the lore about him.
Wow.
So you think that, Eric wouldn't have a bumhole? I mean, Jesus wouldn't have a bumhole either.
Yeah, I really.
Anyways, back to The Chosen. Sorry.
Yeah, no, just that I'm scared to say anything good about it now because if there's controversy. But I've loved it.
It's the dumb evangelicals.
Every episode has made me cry a little bit. The way they weave stuff together, there's nothing that's jumped out as like, ooh, that's not in the Bible and it's bad. Like they give it a lot more color. So there's a lot of like, well, we don't think Matthew had a dog, but he has a dog in the series and there's nothing saying he couldn't have a dog, so I just appreciate, I'll be like sobbing hysterical or like yelling out spoilers. And it's the Bible, so we all know. But there's a lot of, how do you know who that is already? And I'm just like, isn't the Gospels a thing? I'm so excited. I don't know. I've enjoyed it quite a bit, but now I have to look up Jesus peeing, apparently.
Who were you watching it with?
I'm watching it with my family. My husband and the little children.
No, it wasn't like, it's not actually canon of the show. I think it might have been one of the producers because like there were all these dumb evangelicals. I've just coined that term here and now, and I love it.
Write it down.
Okay, so there was some dumb evangelicals that were like criticizing him for like insinuating that Jesus made a mistake. Like there was an episode where it's like, oh, Jesus made a mistake, and they're like, le gasp, he's not allowed to make mistakes, right?
Okay.
So then they're like, oh, Jesus can't be sinful because then the whole thing falls apart, and now we actually have to try to be good people instead of just asking for our sins to be forgiven all the time.
I'm trying to think if I had seen that already or if it's coming up, but interesting.
So I think it was somebody involved in the show was like, well, wait till I come out with the episode where, Jesus can't pee at night, which I'm like, I don't understand what's going on there, but it makes me wonder if he had a bumhole. That's all.
What a teaser.
I mean, obviously.
Good heavens.
Okay. So I don't think about the devil much, do you?
No. I'm going to say no. I definitely try to keep in mind that, if I'm going to believe that there's God and angels and good forces that I kind of have to believe that the opposite is out there. But the actual Lucifer, no, I don't think so.
I don't know how to click this link without like losing my spot.
Okay.
So I had to edit that out.
Behind the scenes.
Because that would have been super boring for people to hear all of that.
But
And
I have an
so
old
I edited
list.
it out. And so this is my segue into the next topic without you guys noticing
So
that I
smooth,
edited
babe.
it out. Yeah, I'm definitely going to keep that part. Controversial country songs.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's like a couple. There's one that's like the rich men north of Richmond.
Yes.
And then there was that one, try it out in
That
a
is
small town.
Yeah.
Try that in a small town. Sounds like a sex thing.
That was the first thing I thought too, and I thought it was just me. I don't know why.
Want to try that in a small town?
I instantly was like going right to the towns where like you still can't have sex on a Sunday. It's like still illegal on the books. I don't know how you get caught, but it's out there. But that's the first thing I thought. Okay. Whew.
Sex on a Sunday. Elon Sex
Chick-fil-A.
is illegal in some towns. Poor Elon. Homie wants to breed.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyways, it was kind of interesting because like that try that in a small town was like kind of insinuating that like a lot of the like violence that you have in cities, like I think from like a conservative perspective, they're just like saying the disrespect of like gang members and how they'll just like attack random people.
Yeah.
That would never happen in a small town.
Yeah.
Disrespecting the cops, that would never happen in a small town. And so the conservatives are like, this is a great song.
Right.
And then on the flip side, people on the left were like, this is racist because it talks about like Black Lives Matter and saying like, if you were black, you would get your ass kicked in our town, right? Is essentially how they took it. And I'm looking at this and I'm like, this is like the perfect song to just like cause shit.
Like, I can't wait for this to be used over like footage of small town going down, crap. I just also found it like the song is all about we'll get violent on you. Like,
yeah.
Like, hey, people who are violent in the city, be violent here, and we're also going to beat your ass. And it's like,
yeah,
this is the same thing. It's two different. I picked through it to see if anything was overtly racist. This was like 3 weeks ago, and I don't remember.
Yeah,
like it wasn't try being black in a small town, but it definitely wasn't welcoming. And I just anytime it's like, yeah, we're gonna beat you, I'm like, show me those family values. Good job. Like I don't love that.
No, I think like the whole idea of violence too, it's like I value this human life over this other one.
Yeah.
Like war, I've thought a lot about that and how it's like it's always about how we value the lives of the people wearing this uniform over the value of lives of people wearing this other uniform.
Yeah.
And it's a hard thing to reconcile, especially when you talk about like having, civilians involved.
Yeah.
And how it impacts civilian lives, whether they're directly killed or whether they lose a loved one or they have a loved one that returned that's never the same. But it's like, how do we value human life? And I mean, I would love it if, we were able to, people of faith were able to value human life in a better way than people outside of faith, but it just doesn't seem to be happening.
Yeah. And it's the degrees to which life is of value. I mean, that quote was going around again of like, well, if we're going to be allowed to have guns and we should, some loss of life is expected and it's a price we're willing to pay. I don't know who we is, but like that was going around and that's not and it was around school shootings. Like that's not a trade anybody is going to make. Is Canada super like military driven? I feel like we're ODing on.
We have like more so like a peacekeeping force is kind of like what we're known for.
Okay.
But it's kind of interesting because like in Canada, there's a contingent of like conservatives that want to be American. So yeah, for sure, it's like gotta respect. Thank you for your service and all that stuff. And I'm like, I have a hard time. Like, I don't want to disrespect soldiers. I think it's incredible that anybody would sign up for that.
Yeah.
If it is necessary. Like I couldn't do it. And so at some level, if there is some contribution that military has done to allowing me to have freedom, I should have some gratitude for that. But I'm also kind of like, well, why are we killing people in Afghanistan? That doesn't make any sense. And people, like, it's such a hard thing to talk about because a lot of people, like particularly Americans, when I talk to them about it, they're like, no, those people are fighting for our freedom. And they're not even trying to understand it. They're just saying they fight for our freedom. You got to respect that. You got to say thank you for your service.
I'm very much like, I have a dear, consider him family friend that was in the military and in Iraq and everything for years. He's finally going to retire. And tremendous respect for him. And I know why he went and what he felt like he was doing. But I also kind of feel like I don't think that had what he did over there didn't affect me and my ability to live my life here. Like, I feel like the wars that actually ended up saving lives in like net or preserving freedom or setting captives free has not been in a while. At least when it comes to like American war history. Like, I'm not going to touch Russia and Ukraine, but it's been a minute. I mean, I'm like the Civil War.
Like, if we have like, I remember there was like I think it was an ISIS compound that had like a bunch of girls that they took hostage, and there was like a military force that went in and like basically rescued them, and there were probably some guards shot or whatever, right? But like, to me, I'm like, okay, that I can get behind.
Right. Yeah, totally get that for sure.
But I think even, what we call the good wars, like World War I and World War II, it's like, oh, we had to do it. It's like, did we? Like, I know, like Keith Giles in his book, Jesus on War.
On war? Jesus unpieced.
Jesus on gun bang bang. I don't know. I can't remember what it's called. I'm so bad for those titles. But in one of his book that was like against war, anyways, he talks about World War II, and he's like, okay, everyone agrees World War II was something we had to get involved in. And he's like, do you know that like the German military used jet fuel to propel like basically all of their force, basically. And it came from Standard Oil, which is an American company. Yeah. And he argues that if Standard Oil wasn't all about profits, they could have stopped the war right then and there by not supplying them with jet fuel. So I'm like, so I think there are other ways of looking at these things. But in the end, I'm just kind of like, well, I'm just not a fan of killing people, like no matter what. I would say the same thing too about abortion. I'm like, I'm not a fan of killing fetuses. Right. I just would not tell a woman in that situation, you absolutely have to give birth. Like, no.
Yeah.
Don't be lazy. You birth that baby.
Oh my God. Yeah. Like, again, having done it twice, having seen it several times as a birth doula and been there, I'm like, I couldn't make anybody do this. I mean, it's tough when it's a stable family unit. It's tough when it's a second, like when these babies are wanted, it's tough. And it's as much as a doula and a midwife supporter, I like to be very like, no, it's your body's made to do this. It's very natural. It gets dangerous at times, but it's really part of what you're meant to do if you want to. And then also get to go, it could kill you at any moment. Like, it was 9 terrifying months. And then 2 days of work to like, that was scary to get it out. But like, it's not easy, and no one should have to. And God, especially not children. I'm sorry. No.
Yeah. I fully agree. I'm like, I think this is it's a big issue of equality because men never have to face that. So for women to not have that element of control to their bodies, particularly in situations where they were either coerced or worse into getting pregnant. I can't be okay with that. So, all right. So, other country song.
Yes.
The Rich Men North of Richmond. And I think this is another one that's like perfectly written in such a way that the conservative will say this is about the working man, and the leftist, all they're going to hear is, those fat people on welfare eating chocolate. I'm funding their chocolate. And I thought what was incredible is there was actually an article I read on this, and I think it articulated what was really bothering me about all of this. And he said, this is Eric Levitz. Whereas left populism posits a binary between the people and the elites, right populism conjures a three-part division in society between the people, the elites, and the undeserving others whom the elites coddle at the people's expense.
John.
This is exactly what's happening.
Oh, that's good.
It is, because I was trying to figure out what's bothering me about this. And I'm like, this is the case with like everything. It's like we're mad at the elites and they're mad at the elites because they're allowing those people to be coddled. And it's like, wow.
Interesting. I didn't think of that as like the three parts of the pie.
Yeah, I think it helps me process this now because I'm like, that's the difference. That's the big difference. Is like they are mad at the elites for allowing those people to be coddled at their expense. Whereas we're just like, no, the elites are taking too much.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay. I have to think about that. That's really good.
We have in Canada, we have kind of a dispute going on between us and Meta. I don't know if you heard about that.
It popped up just as I pulled up to my house to go do this. It popped up. They like news is banned, right? And they're trying to get that lifted. I did not realize that was happening. A and B, because of the fires, obviously you kind of got to get information out there. That's crazy.
So essentially what happened is like they came out with a new bill that is trying to push Canadian content like via algorithm, really. But on top of that, they want like Canadian news to be funded by social media companies. So every time you click on it, that social media company should be taking out of ad revenue and actually paying those news agencies, right? And Meta's like, no, we're not doing that. So they refuse to have Canadian content in their news because they don't want to pay for the articles. And then Google's the same way. Like Google's another one. For whatever reason, Twitter still has Canadian news. So I'm like, I don't know. But it's interesting because it's kind of like Australia tried to do the same thing. And the Australian government caved and allowed news back. I also heard that Canadians are moderately more happy on Facebook as a result.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Which would make sense because now you can go back to just posting pics of your kids or whatever.
Oh, that's fascinating. No, I didn't realize that was the reason. Okay.
But it got me thinking, like somebody said, this is a blunt instrument. Like the government's trying to use a blunt instrument to solve a problem. And in the end, like if the government actually gets its way, it sounds like that's only really going to help the huge like conglomerates that do news in Canada, which I'm not sure if all of them are American owned, but most of them are American owned anyways.
Sorry.
And so it's interesting. So, but it's like a lot of times it's like we're trying to solve problems and we use a blunt instrument.
Yeah.
And I thought I had more to say about that, but I don't know. Oh, but okay, this is the thing. I was listening to this podcast where they were talking about being able to tell if someone's lying or not, like being able to judge body language and how there's experts that do that and everything. And dude was just basically like, that's all bullshit.
Really?
I'm like, really? Yeah. And so this is what's really interesting. So he starts talking about how, like, in Shakespeare's time, when Shakespeare was writing a play, he would always have like these big long monologues where, you know, like the characters able to exposit what's going on in their brain. But as like the art form developed, they developed the art form in such a way of acting so that their facial expressions will always show what they're feeling. And so if you, for example, were to watch Friends with mute on, you'd know the whole story. Actually, funny, I was telling my kid this, and they're like, yeah, it's because the plot is shit. But
you could
but
just
it's
guess.
like you don't need to hear the words to tell what's going on, because the faces are so expressive. And it got me thinking about how, like, essentially it's like that's true about all of the media we consume. Everyone, you could tell by their face how they're feeling. Yet in real life, you've got people who have like RBF, right?
This one right here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny. I don't see it. But anyways.
I'm on right now, but if you see me like driving my car, I look like a murderer. It's awful.
It's like when you're not masking.
Yeah. When I'm not coded to be around people,
So it was interesting because basically he said there are matched people and there are unmatched people. Matched people, their face will match what they're feeling. Unmatched people, their face will not match what they're feeling. And so, like, if you really wanted to tell whether someone is lying or telling the truth, what you would do is actually do some test questions with them. Like, you've got to kind of test their baseline, and then maybe you can start making those judgments. Yeah.
Which is grossly inaccurate, but still. Interesting. Okay.
Huh. I like to mess with sayings. Like, there was like the show Trailer Park Boys. There was like there's a guy, Ricky, who always like messes up like idioms. I think idioms are dumb to begin with. But anyways, he always messes up idioms. Like, he's like, well, might as well get two birds stoned, right? Or he's like, well, they could be friends with the Benjamins. And it's like, you mean friends with benefits? He's like, no, friends with the Benjamins. The Benjamins do all this weird kinky sex stuff. So I was thinking, I thought it would be funny if somebody said, it's like, well, I don't want to throw him onto the bus.
I like that.
And then you correct me, right?
Right.
So I'm like, I don't want to throw him onto the bus.
Think you mean under the bus?
Why would I do that? That's mean. Or this one. Correct me on this one too.
Okay.
That's enough comments from the penis gallery.
I think you mean the peanut gallery, John.
That doesn't even make sense, though.
Peanuts don't even talk.
But penises do. Apparently.
I see. It still doesn't make sense. It's perfect.
Some do. No.
I mean, well, that's another show.
I haven't known very many, so. So I was thinking about how, like, people outside of religious circles can have a tendency to value animals more than people within religious circles.
This bothers me. Continue.
And I was thinking about how, like, I don't know if you were brought up with, like, kind of the notion that animals do not have souls.
Yes. I reject
So people
this.
have souls. Animals do not have souls. Therefore, people matter more than animals. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking about how that theology really changes, like, decision making, like should we put this animal down,
Mm.
and stuff like that. And I was just kind of surprised. I can't remember what book I was reading. But anyway, keep going.
I love
You
my
go.
dogs. I like most. I know that there are some that, like, when they're totally feral, like bears aren't mean; they're just hungry. I get it. And then there are some that I'm like, these animals are so aware and so caring. Like, they have a gentle spirit about them. That I'm like, I don't know. And why would he make them for no reason? We're not supposed to eat all of them. Like, it's not that. So I don't know. I think it kind of sucks to be like, no, there's no soul in there. I don't like that. I'm not for that.
I just love people that love animals. I just think it's really, they're such cool people.
So precious. I would touch anything that will let me touch it. I will pet anything. Yeah. I have a pet that's technically illegal in my state, but I love animals too much.
Is it a unicorn?
Yes.
That's so cool. I want to come see your unicorn.
But it has many more corns. It's a hedgehog. No one knows where I live. It's a hedgehog.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
That's great. I can't remember where I read this.
You're like, she's nuts. Yeah.
I read this in some progressive book, but they talked about non-human kinship, and I just thought that was a beautiful statement.
Oh, that's pretty.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. People, like, anything living can bond. People pair bond things. I mean, I saw a video yesterday of a duck that was raised by an alligator because it hatched in the same clutch of eggs. Like,
what?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I know. So, you're telling me that alligator wasn't, like, blessed by the Holy Spirit to not eat that duck? I mean, I don't know.
Try that in a small town.
Try that in a small town, in a swamp.
I heard on a podcast, or I read in a book. I heard this somewhere. I should just say I heard this somewhere. About animal Prozac and how there are zoo animals that they have to give Prozac to.
Really?
Yeah. And I was like, we put animals in this unnatural situation, and then we have to give them drugs so that they can mask properly.
Such a hard time reconciling with zoos, especially with like really really exotic animals. Of just, I love them and I want to see them. I know I don't have a right to go somewhere and see a puma. Like, they have a right to go live where pumas live. I get the conservation aspect, and like that's important to be done ethically. And I want to go to the zoo. I want to see them all, but I know they're not happy. Like, I struggle with it so much. It's hard for me. But if they're being drugged, I don't think that's happy. I don't think that's good.
But it gets me wondering why we as humans need to be drugged to cope in society. Like, what if society is the problem? What if the school system's the problem and it's not the fact that this kid can't sit still? It's like, why are we making this kid sit still?
That's a good point. And like, just, I would love now a t-shirt that says society is the problem, because we've decided this is how people should live, not how people have lived or how people naturally live. I see it a lot when people talk about bed sharing with babies, which I know is a controversial thing, and there's ways to do it safely, and you don't have to if you don't want to. But like, I sleep better when my husband is home, and I'm like, I know that he's here and he's next to me and I'm safe. Like, babies want to be held. They want to be like, that's a natural, that's fine. They're not doing the wrong thing. But society's like, no, like, the second they start to get drowsy, go put them down and let them self-soothe and let them figure out how to do it on their own. They're 90 hours old, but you got to put them down. Like, I don't know. And the fact that we bring animals into our homes to just kind of live here, like, I think that harkens back to the olden days and that pair bonding of hunters and gatherers taking their dog to go look for things. I don't know. But yeah, I think we've decided, no, we're going to wear weird shoes. We're going to sleep inside. We're going to put artificial lights, and that screws with everything. Yeah. So I don't know. A lot of it is just made up. And I'm like, I don't think we were meant to. We were meant to live for so much more, as Switchfoot said. So well.
I want to say try that in a small town, but it doesn't work.
It doesn't work there. We'll find
I'll have to find another opportunity to say that.
I got to say it 3 times. That's what makes it funny.
Yeah. Callback jokes are so great.
I love it.
How about that dumb umbrella diagram? I just can't stop thinking about how stupid that is.
You know, it went around, it was gone, and then it came back, and I'm like, thanks for reminding me that you're here. So new podcast, not that I have fans or people that follow. I grew up with a lot of Gothard. Like, not the music stuff, because the church was cool and wanted to sing cool music, but everything else was all taken as gospel truth. And we had the umbrellas, and I sat through the IBLP seminars, and it was in the gift shop at church. Like, that's a really sucky gift. But I appreciate the, if that's how your umbrella works, your umbrella sucks. That, like, you have to have levels of the umbrella. But
it's almost like you need, like, so there's Christ is the big umbrella,
yes,
and then a smaller umbrella that's the husband,
right,
and then a smaller umbrella that's the wife, and the children under it, right? And I'm like, just like the structure itself, like, and I remember seeing this like as a young married at like a Pentecostal church, and so like they kind of taught that, and it's like, you're the leader of the home, and it's like, okay, and I don't remember saying, this is not how umbrellas work, man.
It's because really it's not.
Like, yeah, it's like almost like if you made the Christ umbrella like small, and then you made the umbrellas bigger as you go down, maybe, but then Christ is not sufficient. So
yeah,
I think dude just backed himself into the corner when he decided umbrella was the thing.
He was like, no, this is the thing. And I remember, umbrella protection, man, I heard that all the time, and it was such a scare tactic, because all of a sudden you're not under that umbrella of protection. Who knows what's going to happen to you, and it could be very, very bad. Like, I don't know,
what is it about that structure that just lends itself to so much abuse? Like, I guess you're giving men all this power, and then once you give these men this power, you can't undermine them by actually admitting that they're being abusive.
Oh yeah. It's once it's established that power is given by God, it can't be questioned. And once you're established that there's a huge consequence for not being under that authority, then you're scared. And it's terrifying. I mean, I don't know if any Gothard stuff that you've sat through, but like, I remember pages and looking into, like, I don't know where he got that from, that verse, but he's smarter than me, so he must have figured it out, like that we were going to be sent tormentors, which sounds like it's out of Harry Potter, but he truly meant it. Like, he had the chessboard of giving the devil like squares and footholds in your life, and the tormentors that were going to be sent by the devil or possibly by God to like nudge you back into submission. I mean, it was nothing but mentally abusive.
I guess, and it all starts with like the heart is deceitful above all else, where it's like, this doesn't feel right, but we have to do it. And it doesn't feel right because your heart is messed up.
Right.
Right?
Deceitful and desperately wicked.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
I don't think I'm a desperately wicked person. I don't think you are. I mean, my kids are shitheads. They got in trouble today at camp. I don't think that they're depraved human beings. I can do all right, if I'm struggling in my own power and I'm doing it for my own good, my righteousness is worth nothing. I'll give you that. But I just can't go as far as like, we're just so freaking worthless, and there's like just nothing to be said for us, and we're invaluable, horrible, until Jesus shines his light. And I love Jesus so much, but I don't know. The best people I know are to be considered unsaved. And
yeah,
I don't know. I don't think the baseline is evil for people. Not really.
Yeah. Well, I think like we all have our imperfections and require, forgiveness from time to time. I think that this concept of sin has become so problematic because it's like, essentially, we've got this OCD God that's like, he doesn't like it when you do sex that way.
Right.
Or, the other things. But it's primarily sex and gender.
Really
you're not doing
is.
gender right, and you're not doing sex right.
You're
Those are
not
the
bullying
primary things
awesome.
that make the society so depraved.
Yeah.
But it's like Gothard was a child molester. Like, it's like, in the end, it's like they're doing much more wicked stuff than the stuff they're concerned about. And so it's like, well, okay, well, what if we start with like, am I putting good into the world? Am I actually doing things that are better for the people around me? And I feel like for a lot of people, they need religion to do good in the world. And I think for a lot of people, they need to lose religion to do good in the world.
Ooh, I like that.
And I don't think God has a problem with people who've lost religion to do good in the world. And I'm not saying they earn their salvation by doing enough good things. I think that was like, as soon as you go there, that's what I was always brought up with. This is why you have to be a Christian, because you can't do enough good things to be saved.
Yeah.
But I think that this like concept of sin and this concept of like total depravity has led to what we call in educational psychology learned helplessness.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like you've taught yourself that you're incapable of stuff.
Yeah.
And so they have learned helplessness. And so when you call them out on their shit behavior, they're like, well, everybody's sinful.
Yep.
And it's like, no. No, you're not doing good in the world. Can you stop not doing good in the world?
Yeah.
But there's no concept there. They're like, well, no, we all sin. And it's like, you guys have this, and I talked about this actually in the last episode, the flat view of sin. And it's like, if you have a flat view of sin, then you can see like, somebody actually doing damage to people and somebody like not seeing their body the right way. And you see that the same thing.
Yeah.
And it's like, and so like the reason why the church is so angry at trans people and gay people is because they think that they're holding on to this unrepentant sin. Whereas someone like Bill Gothard, he fucked up.
Yeah.
But he asked for forgiveness. So that makes him better than these gay or trans people.
I think that's spot on. And I think, I don't think God's worried about anybody losing a grip on religion. And this came up, I found this fascinating, that it was, religion, if we think of it in terms of like the Pharisees and how they were in scripture. And he told the parable of, like the old wine and the new wine and the wineskins. And I remember always being taught that, well, Jesus is the new wine and, they're like the old ways. But it was brought up like, why did we think that? Jesus was there from the beginning. What if he's the good old wine? And all of their religious dogma and all of their religious, tradition is the new wine that would cause the skins to burst. That their new religion, and he's the way it was meant to be. And I was like, done. That's it. Like, if Jesus is the good old wine, absolutely. So I think it's always there's that invitation to go be friends with him and not count up our little sins and count up our traditions and our perfect prayers, right?
Yeah. It's interesting because like I even had a moment, like where I was talking to Thomas J. Ord, and he said to me, like, I'm not sure if God exists, but I like this concept of God being love, and that's what I'm doing. And I'm like, that's so cool. And I was thinking about how, like, I've talked to a few people that have deconstructed to the point where they're like, they're not sure if God exists.
Yeah.
And for me, I'm like fortunate because I still have this sense of God being with me.
Yeah.
Like just this presence, this constant presence. And I'm like, it's so beautiful. To the point where I can read about Jesus and look at this and say, why do I feel like closer to God than Jesus right now? Because I'm reading some things that Jesus has said and being like, I don't know if I agree with this. I don't know if I like how he treated this woman.
Right.
When he said that, even dogs get scratched from the table. And I'm like, I know, people are like, oh, he was being sarcastic or whatever. But I'm like, I don't know why he had to be a dick there. Right.
Yeah.
And, and then his take on divorce, I'm like, I don't think saying only marital unfaithfulness is a fair way of looking at it. But I'm at peace about that. I'm like, I disagree with Jesus on a couple things, and I'm like, I'm okay with that.
Yeah. I think so. I think that's fine. I don't think he's scared of that.
Yeah. No, I don't have this sense that God is angry with me. I don't have this sense that God is angry with anyone. Like and I think, he's able to, I like the shack where it's like, which of your kids would you want to send to hell?
My God.
And it's like, and I'm like, just that concept that every single one of us is, one of God's children. And it's like, so why would he lose that because they didn't say the right magic words? It's like, sorry, you said Eric, not Jesus, and so you're not saved.
Yeah. I don't know. I'd rather think I'd rather think of it that like the devil in the garden won a bet and now he's got like dibs and Jesus is like, crap, like this is the best way. I got to figure out how to get these people home, like maybe it's not God's wrath. Maybe it's very much the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. He's got, dibs on the blood of the sons of Adam. And Jesus is like, but I got something. I can help with that, I don't know. I just don't want God to be mean.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I just don't recognize that God anymore.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't like how, a God that never changes results in people that never change.
Mm-hmm.
A God who is non-consensual results in people who are non-consensual.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, so I'm like, I don't like where it leads. And to me, the most important thing about belief is where it takes us. I'm like, what kind of people does it make us into? I find it so futile to see Christians and atheists arguing over whether God exists. I'm like, the worst one of you, Christians, the worst one of you atheists, you're not doing any good in the world and you're just stuck in this fight.
Yeah.
And the best one of you Christians and the best one of you atheists, you're actually doing good in the world. And I'm like, that's what matters.
Yeah.
If God is love, you putting love into the world is an act of God. And so let's do that. Can we just do that?
Oh, absolutely. And, but my absolutely is just coming from the penis gallery.
Well, this was fun.
Very fun. Thank you.
We'll have to do this again.
We should soon.
Like right away.
Right away.
But you guys are going to have to wait for that episode for like 2 weeks.
Wah,
so,
wah.
Yeah. Sucks to be you guys.
Uh-huh.
Sucks to be our listeners.
It really does. Sorry to our fan.
Follow the girl on Twitter.
While you still can. I drink anarchy while you still can.
Are you on other things?
I'm on Instagram. I don't really give it out. And then I did Threads, but because it linked to my Instagram, but like because my kids are on it and stuff, I was like, I'm not really going to use it. I wonder if I can do a separate Threads. Or does
I have
it
a
have
locked
to
account on Threads.
Okay.
So I have a locked account on Threads. You can follow me at Bridge Levoit there. And I'm also on Blue Sky. If you want a Blue Sky invite, I will hook you up.
Yeah. Is it like poppin'?
Yeah.
Do we like it over there?
Yeah. You can have the next one.
Yeah.
And then I'll open up to listeners. DM me if you want. DM me on Elon Sex if you want. Slip into my DMs.
Ooh, so slimy.
So slimy. All right.
All right.
Goodbye, everyone.
See you in a little bit.